This video is very much in keeping with the very important subject of free expression in this country. My last video, of course, was how I feel it's so important that we value a free press that scrutinises power and provides a platform for debate. I think it's legitimate to criticise the press. They've got plenty of flaws, but they really, really do present an invaluable role in our democracy. One of the things that I cited was raising awareness of issues that may not otherwise get traction. Now, independent journalists or individuals just uploading videos might well bring attention to that as well, but in order for an individual to bring attention to it, they'd have to really get a viral following, whereas newspapers can reach out to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, so can mass media. So I want to talk a bit about the case of Lucy Connally. I'm going to read out an opinion piece from the Daily Mail. This is the 10th of April. I'm just going to prefix this. If you don't know, Lucy Connally is a woman who was jailed for something she wrote during last year's urban violence in the wake of the appalling murder of 3 little girls in Southport. We don't need any introduction to what happened last year. It was widespread violence across cities in England in response to that. And she's kind of become a personification of the debate around this issue. Now, I'll just prefix this by saying that my initial thoughts regarding Lucy Connally was very little sympathy, because I thought, you're inciting violence at a time when there is violence going on, when lives are being threatened, and people are being terrorized by hateful, rampaging mobs. And then that's not hyperbole. They were, without question, there was far-right components in that violence. Anyone who says otherwise is a liar or just not paying attention. Lives are threatened during that violence, so no one should try to downplay it. I think the way GB News spoke about the violence is, we don't condemn it. I mean, we don't condone it, but, they just fed up citizens. I really have a big problem with presenting violent yobs in anything other than calling them violent yobs. No trying to downplay that. I think GB News did. But I will say this, I now believe the Lucy Connally case is an example of where the justice system could get it dead wrong. And I now believe that a custodial sentence for this woman is too harsh. Anyway, I'm going to read out the piece by Jenni Murray in the Daily Mail, the 10th of April. I broadly agree with what you're saying, and this is the piece. Before I forget, Yasmin Alabi-Brown in the Eye had a piece where she was attacking right-wing women for defending Lucy Connally and talking about them being, cherry-picking what they defend. And she had a rather nauseating angle about women shouldn't be in prison. That's some sexist nonsense, Yasmin Alabi-Brown, but that's about as much as I would expect from her. For me, the issue here isn't about her being a woman. If this was a father who'd done the same thing, I think the same principle would apply. I'm just going to say that in passing, because I think, some people sort of present it as a woman being in prison. I don't think that women should get better or worse treatment than men when it comes to justice. I think it's fundamentally sexist to say that women should get a lesser sentence than men because they are women. But actually, in this case, as Jenni Murray rightly points out, she's actually got a harsher sentence than some men who are clearly more dangerous. So, that's the injustice of this. I'm just going to read it out. Bear with me; it's not excessively long, and I think she's made very good points in this. There's no doubt that Lucy Connally did a very stupid, very offensive thing in the heat of her upset after Axel Radicubana attacked girls at a dance class in Southport last July. Here's what the Northampton childminder and wife of Tory councillor tweeted: "Mass deportation now. set fire to all the, this is verbatim, fucking hotels full of the bastards for all I care. While you're at it, take the treacherous government and politicians with them. I feel physically sick knowing what these families will have to endure. If that makes me racist, so be it. I'm interjecting here. That is a disgusting statement. And, she has no concern over the lives that she is advocating be threatened with that tweet. I'll also say, because Jenni Murray hasn't, I don't think she entirely helped her own case. She didn't show immediate regret. Yes, she deleted it, but I think that was only for self-preservation. I don't think it was out of regret. Probably she realised what she'd said was stupid. I don't think she entirely helped her own case. Apparently, she joked with friends about what she'd written. Um, so that's one thing. Irrespective, though, I still think the sentence is too harsh. It astonishes me, this is Jenni Murray, that after all this time and her current awareness of the risks posed by social media, an educated professional woman of 41 could have felt it was safe to publish such a violent, hateful tweet. The crime in Southport had given rise to riot, and indeed a hotel housing migrants in Tamworth would be set on fire a few days later. It was widely and wrongly assumed that the Southport attacker, 18-year-old Rudakabana, was a recent migrant. He was not. His Rwandan parents had settled in Britain in 2002 and he was born in Cardiff. She mentioned the hotel set on fire in Tamworth. There was another one set on fire in Rotherham. So, no one should underestimate the lives were threatened during that unrest. There was a mosque somewhere where the imam actually was in a room and smoke was coming into the building. There was some very serious stuff going on. So lives are threatened here in Sunderland. The mosque needed police protection because of the threats against it. It's clear that Connally soon regretted what she had posted. After she pinged off the tweet, she took her family dog out for a walk, calmed down, thought better of what she'd written in the heat of the moment, went home and deleted the post. She was too late. Now, just before I continue, did she delete it out of genuine regret, like she thought she'd went too far, or was it kind of, oh, well, I better delete this, I could get in hot water? I suspect it's more likely than that. But again, it's not really relevant to the harshness of the sentence. It was too late. It had been up for 4 hours, but had already been read 310,000 times. That's more than the population of Northampton. Someone had seen it, been rightly offended, and took a screenshot. Lucy was arrested and charged under Section 19 of the Public Order Act 1986. Her crime was a publication of material intending to start racial hatred, which carries a maximum 7-year sentence. It's impossible to feel any sympathy for her approval of setting fire to migrant hotels or for not caring about being seen as racist. But her intense sympathy for the families of those poor little girls is understandable when we learn that she and her husband lost their firstborn, Harry, at the age of 19 months as a result of a failure in NHS care. She knows what it is like to grieve for a child. I think that should have been brought into mitigating circumstances. I don't know if it was. But no such sympathy came her way when her case went to court, despite extensive support from those who knew her. Parents of all races praised the care she had given to their children. Their views appeared to have no influence on Judge Melbourne Inman KC, who heard her case at Birmingham Crown Court. It may seem surprising that Connally pleaded guilty, but she had learned from other prisoners in remand that waiting for a court date would take a very long time if you were pleading not guilty, and she was desperate to get home to her husband Ray and their 12-year-old daughter Holly. If a guilty plea would hurry things along, she said she didn't give a damn about having a criminal record. But a prison sentence of 2 years and 7 months must have come as a surprising shock, as a terrible shock. So that's more information about why she took that flippant action too. That's actually quite important. The judge made the direct link between Lucy's short-lived tweet and a serious disorder in a number of areas in the country where mindless violence was used to cause injury and damage to wholly innocent members of the public and their properties. Incidentally, she's from Northampton. I don't know if there's any violence in Northampton. Now, surely that would be a direct causal link if there was violence in the city that she was posting. He described her culpability as clearly a Category A case, as both prosecution and your counsel agree, because you intended to serious violence. But for a woman who clearly regretted her hot-headedness, removed her tweet within hours of posting it, and apologised, that seems ridiculous. Lucy did not participate in any of the violence she appeared to support, but some of the men who were physically involved in the riots were given 2 or 3 year sentences. How can being found guilty of violent disorder be the same as posting a furious, thoughtless tweet, then quickly thinking better of it? Lucy was given a harsher punishment than many men guilty of domestic violence against women. That's true, and it's a disgrace. According to the charity Refuge, if convicted, perpetrators, usually dangerous repeat offenders who pose a very real threat if they aren't behind bars, often receive 12 months or less. Meanwhile, rapists are rarely caught, rarely charged, and rarely found guilty of a crime which merits a good long prison sentence. As for vile tweets, at times I am still seized with fear if I recall horrific messages I received on social media when I dared to write that I didn't believe trans women could call themselves real women. They cannot change their sex, only their gender. I suffered months of online threats. A few were determined to rape me. Several thought murder was the only way to silence this gobby turf, trans exclusionary radical feminists. I didn't report any of them to police. I didn't believe anything would be done if I did. Thanks to adolescence, that's that new dramatization. We all know about incels and voluntary celibates online, and Andrew Tate encouraging young men to treat women badly. Were the people ready to jump on those violently misogynistic tweets and report them to the police, as someone was prepared to do with Lucy? I wonder if including her anger at government and politicians weighed against her. Was she too open about a view shared, I'm sure by many, that not enough was being done to sort out immigration and ease the pressure on public services and taxpayers' money? Was Lucy used as a warning to others, suggesting we all keep our mouths shut? That's not what the justice system is about. At least it's not what it should be about. Lucy now faces more upset as she's been refused ROTL, release and temporary licence. It's a policy which allows prisoners to leave for short periods prior to the release to maintain family ties. Lucy is desperate to be at home with her daughter, who's said to have been having problems at school, so she's been denied access to her child. Lucy's probation officer could see no reason for her not being allowed out, but was allegedly told by a prison official there was no way Lucy could be let out on a tag because of press and public perception. I warrant a majority of the public would think this mother should be at home with her daughter. She presents no risk of violence to the community. She deserved to be punished for a hateful, cruel, racist tweet. Her apology should have been accepted. She should have been given a substantial fine and left to live with the terrible shame I'm sure she still feels. Prison in this case was entirely inappropriate. And I have to say I agree. My initial thought was some sort of custodial sentence was warranted, but the length of it, well over 2 years, is definitely harsh when you consider violent offences get less. Now, I don't entirely agree with Toby Young of the Free Speech Union, who kind of trivialised what she said I think he put it as a brain fart. I think inciting violence is a serious thing when there is already a high temperature in society. So anyone who thinks that she shouldn't get any punishment, I strongly disagree with that. They need to visit some of the shops that were vandalised or people who were living in fear of the mobs attacking them. So when someone ostensibly with a big social media presence comes out with something like that, it does have real world consequences. I don't agree that she should have faced absolutely no consequences for inciting violence, because that's essentially what she was doing. She was inciting violence. Should that be in the same category as directly threatening someone? For example, those trans extremists who were directly threatening Jenni Murray? I'm not sure. Maybe not. I think directly threatening someone should be a higher tier. Generically advocating violence, kind of generically as opposed to an individual, targeting an individual, I would put it on a slightly less threshold, because it can be in the heat of the moment out of stupidity. What I would advocate in her case is a fine and a community sentence, and perhaps a mandatory visit to some of the, sites that were damaged by the violence to make her feel guilty about it. But prison, we hear about prisons being overcrowded. We hear about the pressures on the prison system. Is this really someone who should be seen as a priority inmate? I don't think so. And I have to agree with what Jenni Murray speculates. Is her criticism of government policy a factor in this? I do believe, and this is speculation, I don't have hard evidence for it, it's my gut feeling. I do believe that there is an elitism in our justice system. I think a lot of judges in this country kind of want to make an example of people. If those individuals have questioned the powers that be, whether it be the government, whether it be the judiciary itself, the establishment, for want of a better term, I do think that judges want to make an example of people. That shouldn't be the way that justice is done. There has to be a consistency. I am very, very critical of the sentencing committee, and I really am in a mind to message them. Recently, they criticised the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, for addressing the issue of two-tier justice. Now, often that has been thrown at the government, but actually that issue, it just as much applies to the police, it just as much applies to the judiciary. What we have to have is a situation where justice is seen to be fair and consistent. Right now, it's not. Many, many people do believe there's two-tier justice. They point to this and say, why is this woman getting years behind bars? Years. And yet you get people who are actually guilty of serious violence get a lesser sentence. And, you know, this idea that anyone who questions immigration is a far-right racist, I think Starmer's attitude, you know, he may have only been talking about genuine far-right provocateurs, of which there were definitely a presence during those riots, but I think his message was poor. I think he didn't express it very well. You know, I don't think Keir Starmer's a stupid man, but I think that by kind of connecting all anger at immigration with the far right, you know, he hasn't done enough to basically assure people that, yeah, there's legitimate debate around that, particularly when Labour has inherited the issue of, you know, the small boats and so on. So this case really, I think there needs to be an urgent review of her case. I think she needs to be released immediately. She's already served significant time behind bars. She's been denied access to her child, which is just callous. I see no reason for it. She's clearly learned from her mistakes. She's not been advocating further violence behind bars. You know, she's not. I don't think she's a threat to the public. So, you know, in summary, I don't agree with those who say that she's done nothing wrong. I do think that inciting violence is, particularly when there's unrest going on, should warrant some sort of punishment. I don't think it's trivial. Um, but it is pretty illogical that someone who makes a stupid post um, gets potentially a harsher sentence than someone actually doing the violence. That doesn't make any sense. Now, the hardcore rioters, they get pretty hefty sentences, 11 years, 9 years, good. But Jenni Murray makes a very valid point. Why is it violent thugs who beat up their girlfriend get a lesser sentence than a woman who makes a stupid post but didn't herself engage in violence? That makes no sense. So our justice system, the sentencing council, judges, need to start reading the room. They need to start understanding that the public are sick and tired of inconsistency. The Sentencing Council claims that one of their roles is to be consistent in justice. Well, they're clearly not. I have a good mind to message them, but I wonder what's the point. They'll just come up with a bureaucratic response and they'll insist that they are not advocating two-tier justice. And specifically, I should say, Shabana Mahmood was addressing an issue of new guidelines, which ostensibly are supposed to look at if an offender comes from a minority background, should that weigh into the sentence? Absolutely not. You know, no one should get a lesser sentence because they're black or Asian. Um, so I think the justice establishment do a pretty damn good job of infuriating the public with their lack of consistency. I suppose if anything good comes out of this case, although I don't know if it's really good, it would be that maybe people will think twice about writing stupid things online and threatening people. But, on a broader issue here, we see people even being arrested for non-threatening posts. I mean, I think what she wrote is far more serious than what that couple in Hertfordshire wrote against the school. But even in that case, we saw Hertfordshire police arrest him. That is very disturbing. Incidentally, when I was talking about freedom of speech around the world, I just read in the Eye that an American academic in Thailand has been arrested under their notorious lèse majesté laws. Now, I'd always thought, okay, that's appalling. That doesn't happen in Britain, but we really are seeing a serious situation in this country. I don't think that threatening violence or inciting violence should be protected under free speech, but I do think there has to be proportionality. I don't think that jailing this woman, as long as she's being jailed, is appropriate. When she has expressed remorse, when she's clearly not a threat to the public, she needs to be released immediately, and I would have that as time served. What should have happened is she should have got a fine, community sentence, and perhaps visit one of the sites where cleanup was going on. But that would be it. At a time when prisons are under crisis, it makes no sense that the elitist justice establishment thinks that, we have to make an example of her. She has to stay behind bars. Something really not right about that.